Hey friends, my name is Z and you're watching MakesItEasy, and welcome to the last video for section 2 of IGCSE Business Studies. And in our next lesson we'll move on to section 3, which is marketing. But here's section 2, 2.4 here, and we have internal and external communication. And by the end of the lesson you should be able to describe 2.4.1, why effective communication is important and the methods used to achieve it, and 2.4.2 to demonstrate an awareness of communication barriers. So check out the pinned comment for all the timestamps. But we'll move on now to 2.4.1, why effective communication is important and the methods. So here's effective communication. Communication occurs when a message is transferred from one person to another who understands the content of the message, and it's a natural part of the life with other people, and that's one important part of communication, and it must be effective. This means that the information or message being sent is received, understood, and acted upon the way that intended, and if it isn't, it can be annoying for us. However, for businesses, communication which is ineffective or which fails altogether can result in a serious consequence. And here's the benefits and limitations of different communication methods, including those based in IT. And here's internal communication. I'll just skim through this. And in all organizations, it is necessary for people to communicate with each other in various ways. And without communication, we will be working as individuals with no links. Hence, the task of management in guiding, instructing, and warning and encouraging workers will become impossible. And here are just some examples of common messages communicated within the business, which is internal communication. The way in which each message is communicated is also shown below. Number 1, please do not smoke in this area, it's noticed on the table. How many hours did you work last week? Is when a manager asks a worker. There will be a fire drill at 11 AM today, which is a notice on the board. The cutting machine has broken down. Can you call the engineer as soon as possible? A telephone call. And lastly, sales last week reached a record level. You will need to increase your output. And here's an email. And these are just some examples to show a wide range of topics which will need to be communicated within a business. Then here's external communication, and this occurs when the messages are being sent between one organization and another, or between organizations and people other than employees, like customers. Some of the main examples of external communications are orders from goods from suppliers, sending information to customers about prices and delivery times, advertising goods or services, and asking customers to pay bills on time. And it is just as important for a business to have a good external communication as good internal communication. And the main differences between the internal and external communication is whom is being communicated with. Then now we have why external communication has worked well. External communication is very important to the image and efficiency of a business. And if a company communicates ineffectively with suppliers, it may be sent the wrong materials. And here are some more examples of external communication, and we can image how serious it would be if the communication was not effective in all these cases. Number 1, a finance manager writes a letter to the tax office asking how much tax must be paid this year. Number 2, a sales manager records a customer order taken over the internet for 330 items to be delivered by next Wednesday. And number 3, a business must contact thousands of customers who have bought a product which turns out to be dangerous. An email is sent to all customers who bought the products and to ask them to return the item for a refund. And the process of effective communication involves the following 4 features. A transmitter or a sender of the message, which is the person who wishes to pass on the information to others. A medium of communication or a method of sending the message, like a letter or notice board. A receiver of the information, the person whom the message should be sent to. And a feedback where the receiver confirms that the message has been received and responded to. and this ensures that information has been correctly received by the right person and, if necessary, acted upon. Then we have one-way communication and two-way communication. And one-way communication occurs when the receiver of the message has no chance to reply or to respond to a message. And two-way communication is basically the opposite, and it's when there's a reply or response from the receiver. And two-way communication involves two people, both people are involved in the communication process, and this could lead to a better and clearer information. So just to demonstrate or to put it into context, a few lessons before we looked into the leadership styles, and one-way communication happens in autocratic leadership style, and two-way communication happens in. And here's the advantage of two-way communication. It should become absolutely clear to the sender whether or not the person receiving the message has understood it and acted upon. And if they have not, then perhaps the message needs to be sent again and made clearer. Effective communication has not taken place until the message is understood by the receiver. Then we have both people are now involved in the communication process, and the receiver feels more a part of the process. He or she can make a real contribution to the topic being discussed or communicated, which may help to motivate the receiver. Then we have communication methods. And information can be sent or transmitted in a number of different ways. These are called the communication methods. For example, verbal methods, like speaking to the receiver. Written methods, including letters or notice or posters. And visual methods, which includes diagrams, charts, and videos. And different messages require different methods of communication, so there's no best method in all cases. For example, for the visual methods like charts and diagrams, it's best to present statistics with visual. Then now we recommend and justify which communication methods to be used, and choosing the appropriate communication method. And there are several factors that the sender of a message should consider before choosing the most appropriate method to use to communicate with the receiver. Number one, the speed, how is it important that the receiver gets the information really quickly? The cost, is it important to keep the cost down? Message details, how detailed is the message? The leadership styles, as I mentioned, democratic or autocratic. Receiver, who is or are the target receivers? The importance of a written record, if it's essential that a written record can be referred to at some time in the future, then verbal communication will be inappropriate because you can't track it. And importance of feedback. If it's essential that a sender receive a feedback, perhaps very quickly, then the direct verbal feedback or method of communication might be the most appropriate. Then verbal methods and different types. And verbal or oral communication methods include face-to-face, one-to-one, or the meeting, telephone conversations, video conferencing like Zoom meeting, and meeting and team briefings. Advantage includes the information can be given out quickly, there's an opportunity for immediate feedback and two-way communication, and the message is often reinforced by seeing the speaker, by their body language or facial expression of speaker or the receiver. But disadvantage is that in a meeting, there's no way of telling whether everybody is listening or has understood the message. It can take longer to use verbal methods when feedback occurs than to use a written form of communication. And when an accurate or permanent record of message is needed, a verbal method is inappropriate as there's no permanent record. And here's written communication methods, including those based on IT, and I'll just skim through this. And written methods of communication include the following: business letters, like these, used for either internal or external; memos, abbreviation for this, and this written message used only internally, for some example of this; reports, which is basically a detailed document about a particular issue or problem, and these are often produced by experts working in the business; and notices pinned on boards, and these are used to display information which is open to everyone or everybody. However, there is no certainty that they are read. And text messages. Mobile phones allow for a quick and convenient communication with others, and a permanent record exists of the communication until this is deleted. However, there is no way of assessing the tone of the message or the mood of the sender in text messages, and this can sometimes cause failures in communication without knowing the emotions. And email, social networking sites, tweeting, and other forms of IT communications. And the internet allows easy and effective communication with customers and suppliers. Then advantage of written communication. There's a hard evidence or a permanent record, and it is essential for certain messages involving complicated details which might be misunderstood in the telephone call. And the written message can be copied and sent to many people or to be forwarded. And electronic communication is a quick and cheap way to reach a large number of people. But disadvantage includes direct feedback is not always possible unless electronic communication is used, but it can be lead to many email messages being created and information overload. And it's not so easy to check that if the message has been received and acted upon as with verbal message. And the language used can be difficult for some receivers to understand. There may be technical lapses like technical key terms. And there's no opportunity for body language to be used to reinforce the message, so we don't really know the true emotions of the receiver or the sender. Then visual communication methods. This could include the films, videos, and Microsoft PowerPoint displays to use to train new staff or to inform sales people about the new products. Posters to explain a simple but important message. Charts and diagrams to show numerical data or to simplify complicated ideas. And photographs and cartoons to add variety, color, and humorous to a message. An advantage of visual communication includes these methods can present information in an appealing and attractive way, and they can be used to make written messages clearer by adding a chart or a diagram to illustrate the point being made. But disadvantage includes there's no feedback, and the sender of the message may need to use other forms of communication to check that the message has been understood, and the charts and diagrams or graphs are difficult for some people to interpret, and the overall message might be misunderstood if the receiver is unsure how to read values from a graph or how to interpret a technical diagram. And here's formal and informal communication. Formal communication is when messages are sent through established channels using professional language. Examples including reading notices on the notice board, receiving reports, emails or memos, or attending official meetings. Informal communication is when information is sent and received casually using everyday language. For example, meeting with friends or contact with others in the canteen or break times. So here we have a diagram, a direction of communication. We have different arrows. Arrow A shows downward communication, and this is when a message is being sent from managers to subordinate for instructions or statement on important business decisions. Arrow B, feedback, shows outward communication. This is when a message or a feedback is passed from subordinates to managers. And arrow B allows for feedback and subordinates are involved in this communication process. And arrow C, rumor or conflicts between different people, shows horizontal or lateral communication. This occurs when people at the same level in an organization communicate or exchange with each other. And here's 2.4.2, demonstrate an awareness of communication barriers. And as we discussed, a successful communication involves sender, receiver, medium use, and feedback. And communication can fail if any one of these four parts does not operate as it should. And if one part fails, it will be called a barrier to effective communication, and this will cause a breakdown. The most common barriers to effective communication and ways to overcome them are listed in the next few slides, which we have number 1, problems with the sender, language which is too difficult to use, and barrier to reduce or remove to ensure that the message is understandable. And number 2, the sender uses verbal means of communication but speaks too quickly or not clear enough. And the thing to be reduced or removed, the barrier, is that sender should make the message as clear as possible. Number 3, the sender communicates the wrong message or passes to the wrong receiver. And a simple thing is just to make sure the right person is receiving the right message. And number 4, the message is too long or too much detail to prevent the main points being understood. And message should be as brief as possible to allow main points to be understood. And there's an abbreviation for it, it's called KISS, like KISS, keep it short and simple. Then we have problems with the medium. The message may be lost so receiver doesn't see it, so it's important to insist on the feedback. The wrong channel has been used, like an important message put on the notice board but most people didn't read. And to reduce it or to remove it, the sender must select an appropriate channel for each message sent. Number 3, the message is sent down a long chain of command and the original meaning of the message may be lost. And to remove or reduce it, the shortest possible channel should be used to avoid this problem. Number 4, no feedback is received, and to remove it, a meeting will be useful to get feedback. Number 5, the breakdown of a medium, like computer failure. And to reduce it, other forms of communication should be made available as well. And here's problems with the receiver. They might not be paying attention or listening, and you can emphasize the importance of this message, and the receiver should be asked for feedback to ensure understanding. And the receiver may not like or trust the sender, and they may be unwilling to accept upon his or her message. And there should be a trust between the sender and the receiver, or effective communication is unlikely. Perhaps another sender should be used who is respected by the receiver. Then we have problems with the feedback. There's no feedback, and perhaps no feedback was asked for, or perhaps the method of communication user didn't allow for feedback. An alternative method of communication might have been better than the allow feedback. And it is received too slowly or distorted. And direct lines of communication between subordinates and managers must be available. Direct communication is always more effective for the barrier to be removed or to reduce. Then we'll go into key terms for 2.4 internal and external communication. And number 1, communication is the transferring of a message from sender to the receiver who understands the message. A message is the information or instructions being passed by the sender to the receiver. Internal communication is between the members of the same organization. External communication is between an organization and other organizations or individuals like customers. Transmitter or sender is the transmitter or sender of the message is the person starting off the process by sending the message. The medium of communication is a method used to send a message, like a letter as a written communication or a meeting as a verbal communication. Receiver is the person who receives the message. Feedback is a reply from the receiver which shows whether the message has been arrived, been understood, and if necessary, acted upon. And one-way communication, it involves a message which does not call for or require a response. And a two-way communication is when the receiver gives a response to the message and there's a discussion about it. And here's more definitions. And below communication barriers is just repeated, so just ignore from external down here, ignore this. So formal communication is when messages are sent through established channels using professional language. And informal communication is when information is sent and received casually using everyday language. And lastly, communication barriers are factors that stop effective communication of messages. And that's it for this last video for section 2 of IGCSE Business for today. We're into 2.4 of internal and external communication. And I hope you guys found it useful and found it helpful, and if you did, please leave a like and subscribe and comment down below if you have any questions or criticisms. And also check out my Instagram in the description for more daily content. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this and found it helpful, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, stay safe and happy learning.